They had everything you could dream of. Fame, fortune, fans shouting their names wherever they went. But behind all those red carpets and million-dollar homes, some stars lost it all. One wrong choice, one addiction, one unexpected turn, and suddenly the spotlight went dark. From living in luxury to sleeping in cars, from being Hollywood icons to living on the streets. These are the jaw-dropping stories of celebrities who went from the top to rock bottom, stars who ended up homeless or completely broke. But before starting this video, please subscribe to the channel and like it. This will help develop the channel. 1. Lonnie Willison from Baywatch. Beauty to Boulevard Blues. Once upon a time on the red carpet, Lonnie Willison was living the California dream. Tanned, fit, and catching everyone's attention as a fitness model and magazine cover girl. Married to Baywatch star Jeremy Jackson, she looked like she walked straight out of a Malibu fantasy. Perfect smile, perfect body, perfect life. But spoiler alert, Hollywood does not do happily ever after. After her 2014 separation, that picture-perfect life fell apart faster than you can imagine. Lonnie's mental health declined, work disappeared, and the bills stacked up higher than her hair in the early 2000s. By 2016, she had lost her apartment, her car, and just about everything else except apparently the photographers following her around. Now, the woman who once walked red carpets walks the streets of Santa Monica, pushing a shopping cart instead of posing with one. Thin, without teeth, and sunburned, she is almost impossible to recognize. A heartbreaking example of what happens when fame forgets your name. The sad irony is that Lonnie's story is still being photographed. The same cameras that once loved her now chase her down alleys. From camera flashes to streetlights, Lonnie Willison's fall reminds us that in Los Angeles, you can go from being the hot new thing to people saying, "Is that really her?" faster than a news refresh. 2. Wesley Snipes from Blade to the tax collector's worst nightmare. In the 1990s, Wesley Snipes was not just a movie star. He was the action hero. From New Jack City to White Men Cannot Jump, and then destroying vampires in Blade, Snipes ruled Hollywood with incredible abs and swagger that could cut through anything. The guy made wearing sunglasses at night look like a lifestyle choice. But even vampire hunters cannot avoid the IRS. While Wesley was bringing in millions, Uncle Sam was apparently his least favorite fan. Between 1999 and 2004, Snipes made about $40 million and did not pay a single penny in federal taxes. His excuse? He claimed he was a non-resident alien. Nice try, Dracula. The court was not amused. In 2008, the Blade star traded red carpets for prison uniforms, sentenced to 3 years behind bars and a $23.5 million tax bill. Turns out you cannot fight the tax code, not even with a sword. When he got out in 2013, Snipes kept things quiet, appearing in a few films, but avoiding the spotlight like it was sunlight. Hollywood loves a comeback story, and if anyone can pull off one last act of redemption, it is the guy who once made not paying taxes look optional. 3. Corey Haim, the lost boy who never grew up. In the late 80s, Corey Haim was not just famous, he was the teenage dream, starring in hits like Lucas, License to Drive, and the classic, The Lost Boys. He had fans camping outside his house and received over 2,000 letters a week. Every kid wanted to be him. Every girl wanted to meet him. But while Hollywood saw a bright young star, behind the scenes, Corey was being introduced to something far darker than fame, and by substances. As the years went by, the teen idol became the warning story. By 2001, he was not living in a mansion. He was living in a garage with his mom. A true Hollywood story showed him struggling with words, trying to edit a demo reel to get work, and even selling personal items for pizza money. At one point, he tried to sell clumps of his hair and a tooth on eBay. Talk about a limited edition collectible. His charm never faded, but the sparkle in his life did. When Corey passed in 2010 from pneumonia, his family could not even afford his funeral and had to ask for donations. It was a heartbreaking ending for the boy who once ruled Hollywood's night sky. A star that burned too bright, too young, and far too fast. 4. Margot Kidder. From Lois Lane to Life in the Fast Lane and Off It, Margot Kidder was not just Superman's girlfriend. She was the definition of bold, brainy, and breathtaking. As Lois Lane, she flirted with danger and deadlines, trading clever remarks with Clark Kent while stealing America's heart. With the Amityville Horror cementing her stardom, Margot had it all: fame, money, and that unmistakable spark. But Hollywood's golden girl soon took a turn straight into chaos. In 1990, a brutal car crash on set left her temporarily paralyzed and broke. From there, life hit the fast lane in reverse. Unable to work, drowning in debt, she declared bankruptcy. Then came 1996. Margot vanished. When police finally found her, she was sleeping in cardboard boxes, hair cut short, teeth missing, and sanity hanging by a thread. The woman who once flew with Superman had fallen to earth hard. But Kidder was not done. She fought her way back, moving to Montana, becoming an activist, and even finding peace. Sadly, in 2018, the curtain fell for good. Her passing was ruled accidental, a tragic final chapter for the woman who once made the Man of Steel weak in the knees. Hollywood taught Margot how to fly, but it also showed her how far there was to fall. 5. Leif Garrett. From teen idol to tragic encore. In the late 70s, Leif Garrett was everywhere, with his feathered hair, dreamy smile, and bubblegum pop hits. He was not just a teen idol. He was the poster boy taped to 1,000,000 bedroom walls. Every time he smiled, a disco ball somewhere spun faster. Fame, fortune, and fangirls. Leif had it all before he could legally drink. But Hollywood fame is like soda, sweet at first, then it goes flat. By the mid-'80s, Leif's career had hit the pause button. The music stopped, the roles disappeared, and the party turned dark. Substances took center stage, and tragedy soon followed. A car crash left his best friend paralyzed, a guilt Leif carried heavier than his gold records. The arrests started piling up, 2004, 2006, 2010, like bad sequels nobody asked for. His booking photos replaced magazine covers, and his net worth sank faster than a one-hit wonder's comeback tour. Still, the guy who once made teenage hearts flutter became a living warning label. Fame fades, but your choices do not. Leif Garrett went from stage lights to street lights, a superstar who learned the hard way that not every encore is worth the applause. 6. Erin Moran. From happy days to heartbreaking nights. Back in the 1970s, Erin Moran was America's sweetheart. As Joni Cunningham on Happy Days, she was the little sister everyone adored. Cute, witty, and always one step ahead of the boys. She even got her own spin-off, Joni Loves Chachi, because, well, America really loved Joni. But when the cameras stopped rolling, the happy days were over. Hollywood moved on, and Erin found herself stuck in the past, typecast, jobless, and spiraling into depression. By 2010, the actress who once lived under studio lights was living in a trailer park in Indiana with her mother-in-law. When that went south after an incident involving drinking, Erin reportedly ended up homeless. The girl who had millions of fans now had nowhere to go. In 2017, tragedy struck. Erin Moran passed away at just 56. No substances, no scandal, just the quiet cruelty of stage 4 cancer. It was a devastating end for the actress who had brought so much joy to others only to run out of it herself. Hollywood gave Erin fame, fortune, and her face on lunchboxes, but it did not give her a safety net. Her story reminds us that sometimes behind the laugh track, the pain is all too real. 7. Gary Coleman. The little big man of Hollywood. In the 80s, Gary Coleman was pure TV gold. As Arnold Jackson on Diff'rent Strokes, he made America laugh with one legendary line. "What you talking about, Willis?" 8D. A phrase so iconic, it could stop a conversation and start a catchphrase empire. He was small in size, but a giant in charisma, one of the most recognizable child stars on the planet. But Hollywood's spotlight can burn hotter than a studio light. Behind the laughter, Gary battled serious health problems, including 2 kidney transplants that stunted his growth. And while he was making millions, someone else was cashing the checks. His parents and business manager. Coleman sued them in 1989 and won, only to declare bankruptcy 10 years later. Talk about a rerun nobody wanted. Adulthood was not kind. Roles dried up, scandals piled on, and depression followed. By the 2000s, the once beloved sitcom star was facing more court dates than auditions. When Gary passed away in 2010 at just 42, The world mourned a man who gave them laughter, but got heartbreak in return. The tiny powerhouse who once ruled primetime TV left behind a lesson bigger than any punchline. In Hollywood, it is not your height that matters. It is how high you are allowed to climb before they pull the ladder away. 8. Brett Butler. From stand-up queen to stand-up survivor. In the 90s, Brett Butler was not just funny, she was fearless. As the sharp-tongued star of Grace Under Fire, she ruled ABC's comedy lineup with sass, southern charm, and a cigarette always ready for a punchline. She was the kind of woman who could roast you and make you thank her for it. But behind the laughs, Brett's life was anything but sitcom material. Fame brought fortune, and with it, addiction. Her behavior grew erratic. The show got chaotic. And in 1998, ABC finally pulled the plug. The grace was gone. The fire was out. She lost her home, her savings, and eventually, her footing. By 2011, Brett Butler, once a network star, was sleeping in homeless shelters in Georgia. It is the kind of plot twist even Hollywood would not write. But she did not stay down for long. She fought her way back, landing small roles and trying to rebuild. Then came 2020. The pandemic hit, work vanished, and rent piled up again. In a bittersweet encore, friends launched a GoFundMe to keep her in her apartment. The woman who once made millions now needed $12,000 just to keep the lights on. Still, Brett being Brett, she laughs through the pain. After all, if life is a joke, she is determined to nail the punchline. 9. Dani Bonaduce. From teen idol to dumpster survivor and back again. Dani Bonaduce, the red-headed wisecracker from the Partridge Family, looked like every kid's dream in the 1970s. Fame, money, and screaming fans. He was the middle son of TV's favorite singing family, cracking jokes and stealing scenes. But behind that mischievous grin was a storm waiting to hit. Fast forward to 1990. Dani flies to Florida to host an anti-substance event for kids and gets arrested trying to buy illegal substances. You cannot make this stuff up. A year later, he is arrested again. This time for assault and robbery in Phoenix. His radio career tanks, his fame fades, and he ends up living in his car behind a dumpster near Hollywood Boulevard, literally sleeping next to his own star on the Walk of Fame. Fans would stop for autographs, smiling, unaware that their childhood hero's home was a trash bin away. But in true Hollywood fashion, Dani did not stay down. He fought his way back, got clean, and rebuilt his life, one laugh at a time. Since 2011, he has been hosting a morning radio show in Seattle, proving that sometimes the funniest comeback stories are born from the darkest corners, preferably not behind a dumpster. 10. Randy Quaid. From Hollywood royalty to fugitive in flannel. Randy Quaid was not just Cousin Eddie from National Lampoon's Vacation. He was Cousin Eddie, the lovable, clueless hillbilly, and the movies slowly started blending into real life. He starred in over 90 films, worked with the biggest names in Hollywood, and then somehow ended up squatting in his own former mansion and running from the law. Talk about a plot twist even Chevy Chase could not see coming. In 2009, Randy and his wife Evie were arrested for allegedly not paying a $10,000 hotel bill with a fake credit card. The next year, they decided to revisit their old house in Santa Barbara by breaking into it and moving into the guest house. When the cops showed up, Randy claimed he still owned the place. Spoiler, he did not. Arrest warrants were issued, but the Quaids skipped court and fled to Canada seeking asylum because apparently Hollywood fame now counts as persecution. After a long, bizarre saga involving wigs, conspiracy theories, and a few very dramatic YouTube videos, the couple finally settled in Vermont. No red carpets, no premieres, just quiet woods, maple syrup, and the occasional flash of that wild Cousin Eddie energy. Randy Quaid went from Hollywood star to real-life outlaw, and somehow it feels like the perfect sequel nobody asked for. 11. Natasha Lyonne. From American Pie to Orange is the new comeback. Natasha Lyonne burst onto the scene with that raspy voice, sharp wit, and the kind of attitude that made American Pie unforgettable. She was Hollywood's favorite smart-mouthed rebel until life decided to test just how rebellious she could get. By the early 2000s, Natasha's wild streak had turned from fun at parties to see you in court. She racked up drinking and driving charges, damaged a Manhattan townhouse, and waged war on her neighbors, all while spiraling into heavy substance use. The actress who once owned the red carpet was suddenly homeless, sick with hepatitis C, and clinging to life in a hospital bed. But Natasha Lyonne does not do quiet tragedies. She does chaotic comebacks. After hitting rock bottom, she checked herself into rehab, got clean, and fought her way back into Hollywood one small role at a time. Slowly, her sharp humor and raw honesty turned her pain into power. Then came Orange is the New Black, the perfect stage for her to transform chaos into charisma. Audiences fell in love all over again, and Natasha rode that wave straight into Poker Face, her hit show on Peacock. She is proof that even if you crash, burn, and nearly blow up your own career, you can still rise again, preferably with killer eyeliner and a punchline that stings just right. 12. Bobby Driscoll, the boy who never grew up, and the dream that did. Bobby Driscoll was Disney's golden boy. Literally the voice of Peter Pan and the face of innocence in Song of the South and Treasure Island. By 9, he had fame, fortune, and a juvenile Oscar sitting on his shelf. By 16, he was flying high until puberty hit harder than Captain Hook's hook. Disney took one look at his acne-covered face and said, "Sorry, kid, you are not magic anymore." Just like that, the boy who taught everyone to never grow up was kicked out of Neverland. What followed was anything but a fairy tale. Rejected by Hollywood, Bobby slipped into substances and petty crime, trading red carpets for booking photos. He did time in a treatment facility, got out, and tried to make a Broadway comeback, but nobody was buying tickets. He wandered through New York, broke and forgotten, a child star without a storybook ending. In 1968, 2 kids playing in an abandoned building stumbled upon his body. A tragic twist, worthy of a dark Disney remake. No fame, no fortune, no applause. Just a lost boy who could not find his way home. Bobby Driscoll was 31 when he passed, proving that in Hollywood, the magic never really leaves, but it sure does not last forever. 13. Marvin Gaye, the Prince of Motown, and the tragedy he could not sing away. Marvin Gaye did not just make music, he made soul. The man's voice could melt hearts, start revolutions, and turn a whisper into a prayer. Hits like Let's Get It On and Sexual Healing crowned him the Prince of Motown, a title he wore like a silky love song. But behind the smooth grooves and romantic lyrics, Marvin was fighting demons louder than any stage crowd. By the mid-70s, the hits kept coming, but so did the chaos. A brutal separation, missed payments, and a mountain of debt big enough to trouble Motown itself. The same man who sang about love was now knee-deep in substances, paranoia, and tax trouble. To escape it all, Marvin fled to Europe, living in exile between recording sessions and breakdowns. When Sexual Healing dropped, it looked like the comeback of a lifetime, but the pain never really left. Then came 1984, the year the music stopped. During a heated argument with his father, Marvin stepped into the storm one last time, and his father ended his life. Just like that, one of music's greatest voices was silenced by the person who gave him life. He passed nearly $10 million in debt. A tragic, poetic ending to a man who gave the world love songs, but never found peace for himself. 14. Aaron Carter, the boy pop star who could not outrun his own spotlight. Aaron Carter was every teenage girl's dream and every 90s mom's car radio soundtrack. At just 9 years old, he sold 1 million copies of his debut album, danced across the same stages as the Backstreet Boys, thanks bro Nick, and became pop royalty with Aaron's Party Come Get It, a song that sounded like pure sugar and teenage rebellion. The kid had everything: fame, fortune, and frosted tips. But fame burns fast, and Aaron learned that the hard way. As the years rolled by, the bubblegum faded and the headlines got darker. His music career stalled, and Aaron became better known for family feuds, Twitter meltdowns, and reality TV chaos than for any chart-topping hit. He accused his mom of taking his money, filed for bankruptcy, and admitted to struggling with addiction and mental health. By his late 20s, the pop prince had turned into a tabloid regular, thinner, more anxious, and desperate to be seen again. He tried to make a comeback. New singles, new look, new Aaron. But instead of selling albums, He ended up selling adult photos on OnlyFans just to stay afloat. Behind the filters and the bravado was a kid who had grown up too fast and never learned how to land. On November 5th, 2022, Aaron Carter was found deceased in his bathtub, just 34 years old. The cause? Drowning from a dangerous mix of Xanax and inhaling refrigerant. A tragic full stop to a story that began with a child's dream and ended in a Hollywood cautionary tale. The boy who threw the ultimate party never got to see how it ended. 15. John Drew Barrymore, the Hollywood heir who lost his script. John Drew Barrymore was born into Hollywood royalty, the son of legendary actor John Barrymore and the father of America's sweetheart Drew Barrymore. You would think the spotlight was his birthright, but instead of basking in it, John seemed determined to run from it, usually straight into trouble. He started out strong with a few decent movie roles, including High Lonesome and The Sundowners. But Hollywood expected another legend. What it got was a headline magnate with a drinking problem. By the late 1950s, John's off-screen drama was doing better ratings than his films. He was arrested for fighting with his wife in a parking lot, then again for a hit and run while intoxicated. His career crashed faster than his car. So he did what any disgraced actor might do. He fled to Italy, grew a beard, and tried to reinvent himself as a mysterious expat artist. Spoiler, it did not work. When he came back to Los Angeles, the erratic behavior only got worse. He vanished into the wilderness for years, living like a hermit with a Hollywood name. Friends called him the Ghost Barrymore, haunting the family legacy but never quite living up to it. By the early 2000s, John was sick, broke, and alone. And then, in a twist worthy of a redemption movie, his daughter Drew, who had survived her own Hollywood meltdown, stepped in to care for him. She paid his bills, sat by his side, and made sure his final chapter ended with dignity. John Drew Barrymore passed in 2004, proving that even in the most dramatic families in showbiz, love still finds a way to steal the scene. 16. Willie Ames, from teen idol to cruise ship comeback. In the late 70s, Willie Ames was living the dream. Poster boy of 8 is Enough, teen idol, and every girl's favorite TV brother. Then came Charles in Charge, which made him even bigger. The kid from Kansas was suddenly making over $1 million a year, smiling for magazine covers, and living like the American dream had a laugh track. But Hollywood dreams have an ugly sense of humor, and Willie was about to find the punchline. As fast as he rose, he fell even faster. Fame faded, roles disappeared, and the good times turned into bad habits. Alcohol, substances, a messy separation, the whole tragic starter pack. Before long, Willie Ames went from Hollywood mansions to sleeping under bushes and in parking garages. The man who once had his own fan club was now counting change for gas money. He hit rock bottom so hard, it practically echoed. But here's the twist. Willie did not stay there. He found faith, sobered up, and literally started over from the bottom. His new gig? Working on a cruise ship as a ping pong attendant. It sounds like a sitcom setup, but it was real. He worked his way up one shuffleboard game at a time until he became a cruise director, few PM, the boss of the boat. Eventually, Hollywood called again, and Willie answered. These days, you can catch him smiling on the Hallmark Channel, starring in wholesome movies that look nothing like his past. From teen idol to homeless to heartwarming comeback, Willie Ames proved that even if life throws you overboard, you can still swim back, grab the mic, and cue the happy ending music. Which of these stories resonated with you the most? If you found value in this tribute, please share your thoughts. It helps keep the memory of these stars alive. You think you already know the darkest Hollywood stories, but the vault of old secrets is still wide open. Behind every perfect red carpet smile and glossy studio family portrait, there were scandals so intense they needed whole teams of fixers and piles of quiet money just to keep them buried. What you are about to hear is not just gossip. It is the real emotional bill that came due when the cameras stopped rolling and the studio lights went dark. Hollywood's so-called golden age was never only about making movies. It was about manufacturing human beings, rebuilding real people into marketable fantasies and then punishing them whenever the truth tried to push through. When the first leaks from studio archives and private memoirs appeared, it felt like the worst had already been exposed, but there was much more. These hidden stories show how far the system would go to protect its image and how many lives were quietly broken to keep the dream alive. 1. Elizabeth Taylor. Elizabeth Taylor's legendary violet eyes made the world fall in love with her. But those same eyes were trained to hide family shame and pain. Her official story said she was the daughter of a respectable art dealer father and a polished social climbing mother. But behind that clean studio biography stood a very different family past. Her father had once gone to prison over financial crimes, something the studio scrubbed from every public record the moment she became their young star. Even more explosive was the family's long, secret history of mental health struggles that executives feared might follow her. Taylor's maternal relatives had faced severe psychiatric crises, and one uncle ended his own life during a psychotic break. A tragedy the family buried as deeply as possible. In an era that treated mental illness like a permanent stain on a bloodline, studio bosses watched Taylor nervously, ready to step in if she showed the same signs. Through her adult life, she wrestled with deep depression, addiction, and what modern doctors would likely call bipolar disorder. But back then, people just called her dramatic or unstable. Her many marriages, public meltdowns, and self-defeating choices were not simply diva behavior, but symptoms of pain she was never allowed to name out loud. What hurt most for Taylor was her endless, almost frantic search for stability through romance and marriage. Each wedding was less about chasing headlines and more about grabbing for a feeling of safety she had never really known at home. Her intense relationships with partners like Richard Burton and Eddie Fisher looked like messy affairs from the outside, but inside they were escape routes from an emotional inheritance she had been warned never to discuss. Only later in life, when she turned her energy toward health, activism, and loyal friendships, did her famous eyes seem to shift from hiding her own secrets to advocating for others living with theirs. 2. Jane Russell. Jane Russell was sold to the public as the perfect curvy bombshell, the dream girl who had everything. In reality, her private heartbreak centered on the one thing she wanted most and could not have: a biological child. As a teenager, she faced an unwanted pregnancy in conservative mid-century America and turned to a dangerous underground procedure that left permanent damage. The price of that decision was her future fertility, something she carried like a quiet wound while the world praised her as the ideal woman. When Russell later married her high school sweetheart, they pretended they were simply waiting for the right time to start a family, while she quietly chased medical treatments and false hope. Eventually, the couple turned to adoption, but even that path was twisted by secrecy and power. One child came through an abusive cross-border baby trade that tore infants from poor families, and another arrived after behind-the-scenes deal-making that erased all records of the birth parents. Publicly, she smiled as a proud mother, but privately she lived in fear that the fragile stories built around those children would collapse. The cruelest twist came when she unexpectedly became pregnant again in her mid-20s, something doctors had said could never happen. For a short time, she believed she had been given a miracle, only to lose the pregnancy after a few months. Friends later said she never emotionally recovered from that loss. Her lifelong work championing adoption took on a different meaning when viewed through this lens. A woman denied the experience she longed for, pouring her pain into helping other families form the bonds she herself had been chasing. 3. Tyrone Power was the classic matinee idol, the kind of handsome leading man whose image was printed on bedroom posters across the country. On screen, he was the perfect romantic hero, but privately he was juggling multiple versions of himself that could never be revealed. Power was attracted to both men and women, and tried to balance public marriages with hidden relationships that would have destroyed his carefully built brand. One long partnership with another man became an open secret within industry circles, yet was completely erased from press coverage by studio publicists. Studio managers also stepped in whenever his relationships with women led to pregnancies that did not fit the public image they were selling. In at least one case, a famous singer became pregnant while Power was still married, and executives rushed to solve the problem quietly with money and pressure. The emotional strain of maintaining those double lives began to show. Friends described him as increasingly anxious, leaning on alcohol and pills just to keep functioning under the weight of secrecy. When he collapsed from a heart attack in his mid-40s during a physically demanding shoot, insiders whispered that years of internal pressure had finally caught up with him. 4. Cary Grant. Cary Grant represented a different kind of ideal. Elegant, witty, and impossibly charming. The man every woman supposedly wanted and every man wanted to be. Behind the polished accent and tailored suits, though, was another complicated private world. For roughly a decade, he shared a home and an intimate partnership with fellow actor Randolph Scott. While studios staged photo shoots with actresses to convince the public they were just two busy bachelors. Later, Grant married one of the richest socialites on Earth in what many close observers believed was more about mutual image repair than romance. As he grew older, Grant turned to psychedelic therapy with a Beverly Hills doctor who dosed him repeatedly with a powerful mind-altering substance. He said the sessions helped him dig into buried emotions, including his feelings for men and the resentment he felt toward a system that had forced him into a lifelong performance. But the therapy also left him vulnerable. The doctor recorded his confessions, creating tapes Grant feared might one day be used against him. By the time he finally had a daughter late in life, he desperately wanted to be a more honest parent, yet decades of emotional armor made it hard to show the tenderness he felt. Those close to him said he spent his final years trying, finally, to merge the charming character he played with the uncertain man he really was. 5. Vincent Price. Vincent Price built his career playing elegant villains and horror icons, his voice alone enough to send chills down an audience's spine. Off-screen, he was a gentle, arts-obsessed, deeply sensitive man, living a life that was far more complicated than his spooky image suggested. He cared for partners of different genders over the decades while still entering conventional marriages for public consumption. Within creative circles, his attraction to men was not exactly a mystery, but he always feared the headline that might finally name it and shatter his reputation. That fear intensified when his son developed severe mental health challenges as a teenager. Price quietly poured a huge share of his income into private treatment centers and specialized care, determined to shield the boy from public cruelty. At the same time, a rival studio hired a private investigator who captured compromising photos of Price with male companions. To keep those pictures out of the press, he paid blackmail for years, diverting that money into an art collection that later became famous. Friends said his deepest worry was never being outed for his own relationships, but the possibility that the scandal would further traumatize his already vulnerable child. 6. Greta Garbo. Greta Garbo built a legend around being unreachable, famously insisting that she wanted to be alone. The reality was messier and far more human. Behind the mysterious public mask was a woman who fell deeply in love, often with other women, and who spent years in an intense on and off relationship with a sophisticated socialite who acted as both lover and guide. Whenever Garbo disappeared from Hollywood for months, fan magazines printed gentle excuses about rest or family trips, while in truth she was hiding away in remote cabins or European retreats with partners the public could never know about. Garbo's feelings did not fit into any tidy box. She had passionate affairs with women, and also formed significant bonds with men, including artists and fellow actors who accepted her need for privacy. At one point, she even entered a secret overseas marriage with a wealthy businessman who agreed to never publicly claim her, essentially turning their union into a private arrangement shielded by money and silence. Her later reputation as a recluse was partly self-protection. After decades of guarding her romantic life, she became terrified that an unexpected photo or tell-all memoir might blow everything open. When she finally passed away, her home was discovered to be full of carefully saved letters and pictures documenting a life spent seeking love in the shadows. 7. Lana Turner. Lana Turner was the glamorous blonde star, whose love life became tabloid fuel. But underneath the headlines was a long history of being hurt and controlled. As a young girl, she endured abuse at home that she never publicly confronted, yet that early trauma shaped every relationship that followed. Studios knew about her past and used it as quiet leverage, reminding her that if she ever stepped too far out of line, they could leak details that would forever brand her as damaged in the eyes of a judgmental public. Turner repeatedly found herself drawn to men who were violent or tied to organized crime, a pattern that exploded into a national scandal when her teenage daughter intervened during a terrifying incident with one of those men. The official story claimed the girl acted alone in a split-second moment of protection, but whispers behind closed doors suggested the truth might be more complicated, and that mother and daughter had made a desperate choice together. Powerful people then stepped in to manage evidence, handpick jurors, and craft a verdict that would keep the studio's valuable star out of prison. The emotional cost to the family was enormous. The daughter spent years in and out of institutions, carrying the weight of the story that had saved her mother's career but shattered her own sense of self. 8. William Holden. William Holden came to symbolize rugged post-war masculinity, the kind of actor who looked perfectly at home with a drink in his hand and a cynical joke on his lips. In private, one of his deepest wounds revolved around a relationship with Audrey Hepburn during the making of a romantic comedy. The two fell intensely in love, but she dreamed of a big family and did not know he had earlier chosen a medical procedure that made him unable to father more children. When he finally told her the truth, she ended the relationship, and the loss haunted him for decades. Holden had made that decision years earlier to protect his wife after a dangerous pregnancy, never imagining how much he would later regret it. Long after the marriage cooled and Hepburn had married someone else and become a mother, he learned that the procedure could sometimes be reversed. By then, it was too late. Friends said that from that point on, his drinking slid from bad habit into real dependence, and he would sit for hours talking about the family he might have had. Studios helped cover up his medical history, terrified that audiences would see him as less of a man if they knew he had chosen permanent birth control. 9. Errol Flynn. Errol Flynn was the charming swashbuckler audiences adored, but his private behavior revealed something far darker. Over the years, a pattern emerged of him targeting very young girls, a pattern the studio understood all too well. Instead of stopping him, executives quietly paid families, moved people around, and tried to keep everything off the police radar. When two teenagers finally went public with accusations, the case rocked the country. Rather than defending Flynn by arguing the claims were impossible, his legal team attacked the accusers, smearing them in court and in the papers as untrustworthy and morally suspect. That ugly strategy worked, and it would become a template Hollywood lawyers repeated for generations whenever powerful men faced similar allegations. Protected by money and influence, Flynn kept chasing younger and younger companions, often hosting them on a private boat set up as a floating playground away from cameras. Many of those young women left the encounters with deep emotional trauma and no real path to justice. 10. Bette Davis. Bette Davis was famous for playing sharp, uncompromising women, and audiences assumed that same steel carried into her real life. Behind her tough image was a woman who struggled to give and receive love, especially with her children. Raised by a cold and controlling mother, she entered adulthood determined to be different, yet found herself slipping into the same patterns of emotional distance and harshness. Her oldest daughter grew up feeling unwanted, a belief that would later explode into public view when she wrote a searing book about their relationship. Davis's second child was born with serious disabilities, something she hid from fans for years in fear that the truth would damage her career. She paid for excellent medical care and kept her daughter in specialized institutions, visiting but rarely welcoming her home for long periods. A later adopted son became the one child she seemed able to openly embrace, which only sharpened the sense of rejection her eldest already felt. Professionally, Davis stayed powerful and admired, but inside her family, unspoken resentment and hurt piled up until there was no bridge left between mother and daughter. 11. Gary Cooper. Gary Cooper was the soft-spoken, aw-shucks hero who appeared to embody simple, unwavering decency. Off-screen, he was eaten up by guilt over choices that clashed with that noble image. During a long affair with a talented younger actress, she became pregnant, and instead of standing beside her, he pushed for a quiet procedure that would erase the evidence. For her, the experience was physically and emotionally scarring. For him, it became a secret he dragged behind him like a chain. As a religious man, Cooper knew his actions broke all the rules he claimed to believe in, and he began to drink more heavily as the years went by. Studios helped move the doctor involved out of town and shipped the actress off on a rest trip, while gossip editors were fed harmless cover stories. His wife learned enough to understand what had happened but chose comfort and social status over confrontation. Cooper spent his final years increasingly haunted by what he had done, confiding to a few close friends that he wished he had been brave enough to choose a different path. 12. Clark Gable. Clark Gable was marketed as the king of Hollywood, the ultimate symbol of masculine charm. But his personal life left a trail of unacknowledged children scattered across the country. The best-known story involved a baby conceived with a devout co-star on a film set, a child who was quietly sent away and raised under a different name. That was only one of many. Over the years, waitresses, aspiring actresses, and women far from the spotlight gave birth to his children and then vanished from his orbit after receiving payouts and strict legal agreements. MGM even built a small internal unit with lawyers and investigators whose sole job was to manage paternity scares around Gable. Some women who tried to go public found their careers instantly destroyed. Others accepted the money and the silence clause because they saw no other option. Gable himself sometimes arranged anonymous gifts and kept tabs on a few of the children from a distance, but he never stepped forward as a father. After his passing, so many people came forward claiming blood ties that his estate spent years fending off lawsuits rather than trying to understand the human cost behind them. 13. Frances Farmer. Frances Farmer had the looks and talent to become one of the era's biggest stars, but she refused to play by studio rules. She spoke bluntly about unfair contracts and controlling behavior from executives, and powerful men quickly decided she needed to be taught a lesson. As her conflicts with the studio escalated, a campaign began to paint her as unstable and difficult, setting the stage for something far more brutal. With pressure from those executives, her own mother eventually signed the papers that allowed doctors to lock Farmer away. Inside a state hospital, Farmer was subjected to harsh treatments, popular at the time, including repeated electric shocks and possibly even crude brain surgery. These procedures, often done with little anesthesia and less compassion, left lasting damage. When she tried to describe what had been done to her, people dismissed her words as proof that she really was crazy. The circular logic was perfect for the institutions around her. Abuse led to trauma, trauma led to outbursts, and those outbursts were then used as justification for more control. By the time she was released, the vibrant, rebellious woman who had once terrified studio bosses had been largely broken. 14. Gene Tierney. Gene Tierney seemed almost unreal on screen, all perfect cheekbones and effortless elegance, but off-screen she carried one of the most heartbreaking stories in Hollywood. While pregnant with her first child, she volunteered at an event meant to lift the spirits of service members during the war. A fan, desperate to meet her, ignored quarantine orders and showed up despite being sick with German measles. Tierney later contracted the illness, and her daughter was born with severe disabilities that would require care for life. Years later, at a casual social gathering, that same fan proudly told Tierney the story of sneaking out while contagious just to see her that night. Not realizing the connection, the realization hit the actress like a physical blow. Overwhelmed with guilt, rage, and grief, Tierney began to spiral into deep depression and anxiety. Rather than fully support her, the studio tried to keep the truth quiet and framed her as temperamental whenever she could not perform. She bounced in and out of clinics, receiving electric shock treatments that stripped away memories without healing the wound at the center of her life. 15. Vivien Leigh. Vivien Leigh's performance as Scarlett O'Hara made her an immortal screen icon. But her off-screen reality was dominated by a severe mood disorder that few understood at the time. To outsiders, her swings between intense charm and crushing despair looked like dramatic flair or exhaustion. In private, her husband Laurence Olivier sometimes had to physically restrain her during manic episodes to keep her from putting herself in dangerous situations. Those episodes often included bursts of risky romantic behavior that horrified her once the mood passed. Even as she struggled, studios preferred to hide her condition behind soothing press releases about flu or fatigue. Doctors turned to the same aggressive treatments used on other troubled stars, shocking her brain repeatedly in an attempt to reset her moods. The side effects left her forgetful and disoriented, yet the industry still tried to squeeze more performances out of her whenever she seemed stable enough. Her daughter from an earlier marriage watched her mother drift in and out of hospitals, growing up with a parent who was often absent not by choice but by illness. Hollywood, where aspirations soar and destinies unravel. Behind the glitz and glamour lies a sobering reality. Stardom comes with a profound cost. Substance dependency has shadowed Tinseltown for decades, transforming icons into cautionary tales. From Marilyn Monroe to Heath Ledger, luminaries who captivated audiences found themselves consumed by their struggles. This isn't merely a chronicle of the fallen. It's a stark reminder of how brilliant spotlights can cast the deepest shadows. Number 1. Elvis Presley, the monarch who fell from grace. He was the sovereign of rock and roll, a cultural phenomenon, an artist who revolutionized music forever. But when Elvis Presley's life ended, he wasn't performing, he wasn't creating. He was alone in the bathroom of Graceland. That's the harsh reality they didn't want you to discover. On August 16th, 1977, the world stopped. Elvis was just 42, and the official cause, cardiac arrhythmia. But that was only part of the narrative. Behind the velvet curtains of Graceland, Elvis had become trapped by his own legend and by the mountains of prescription medications sustaining him. While fans saw a larger-than-life icon, those closest witnessed a deteriorating man dependent, unwell, paranoid. His medicine cabinet wasn't a cabinet at all. It was a pharmaceutical collection. Barbiturates, Quaaludes, Demerol, Valium, codeine, dozens of medications for discomfort, for rest, for digestion, for vitality, most of them prescribed in alarming quantities. The reality: Elvis didn't pass from a single incident. He succumbed to years of chemical dependency covered up by physicians, management, and even family. They wanted to preserve the king's image, even as it destroyed him internally. His body was deteriorating. He suffered from chronic digestive issues so severe they became life-threatening. Diabetes, glaucoma. He couldn't perform without being medicated into numbness, but the same medications were harming him progressively. When he collapsed in the bathroom that morning, it wasn't sudden. It was the final chapter in a prolonged, tragic decline. A monarch alone, surrounded by secrets and silence. And yet, the myth endures. We remember the jumpsuits, the devoted fans, the signature style. But behind the legend was a person crying for help, with no one willing to stop the machine. Elvis didn't just experience heart failure. He was consumed by being Elvis Presley. Number 2. Cory Monteith, the star who couldn't sing away the anguish. To the world, he was the golden boy of Glee, the charming athlete with an infectious smile and genuine warmth. But behind that lovable Finn Hudson was a young man quietly struggling. Cory Monteith's battle with dependency didn't begin in Hollywood. It started in childhood. By 13, he was consuming alcohol. By 16, he was experimenting with harmful substances. By 19, he dropped out of school and entered treatment for the first time. But fame has a cruel way of masking deep wounds. When Glee launched him to global stardom, the world saw the star, not the struggle. He tried to stay clean. He spoke openly about his past. He checked into treatment again in 2013, supported by his partner and co-star Lea Michele. It looked like a turning point, but dependency doesn't play fair. Just weeks after finishing treatment, Cory flew to Vancouver, the city where his challenges had always felt closest. On July 13, 2013, he was found unresponsive in his hotel room. The autopsy revealed a toxic combination of harmful substances and alcohol. He was 31. The tragedy devastated everyone. Fans were shocked. The Glee cast was shattered. Lea was heartbroken. How could someone so beloved, so talented, so kind be gone just like that? The cruel twist: Cory's body may have betrayed him. Experts believe that after sobriety, tolerance drops. When Cory relapsed, his body couldn't handle the same amount, and it proved fatal. But more than that, misunderstanding contributed to his passing. Cory didn't fit stereotypes. He was successful, warm, clean-cut, and that's the dangerous misconception we perpetuate, that dependency has a specific appearance. It doesn't. It hides behind smiles, inside hotel rooms, beneath polished red carpets. Cory Monteith didn't pass because he was careless. He passed because he was hurting, and because society doesn't teach us how to survive when your past keeps following you even under the spotlight. Number 3. John Belushi, the comedic force that blazed intensely. He was energetic. He was electric. He was relentless until he wasn't. John Belushi wasn't just humorous. He was a phenomenon, a walking explosion of energy, passion, and chaos that left audiences breathless with laughter. From Saturday Night Live to the Blues Brothers, Belushi didn't just entertain. He consumed every stage he touched. But behind the madness was a person unraveling. At the height of his fame, substances flowed freely. According to Vanity Fair, during the Blues Brothers production, certain expenses were so common, they appeared in the budget. By the time he was filming Neighbors, Belushi was spiraling so severely that crew members had to physically support him off camera just to keep him functional. The celebrations never stopped. The nights never ended, and the darkness kept intensifying. In New York, during his final months, Belushi vanished into a blur of all-night binges, exclusive rooms, and desperate escapes. He was lost in a world that consumed stars and discarded them. Just 5 days before his passing, Photographer Marsha Resnick met with him for what would become his last photo session. He seemed distant, exhausted, fading. Then came March 5th, 1982. Belushi was found lifeless in Bungalow 3 at the Chateau Marmont in West Hollywood, the same hotel where legends once stayed and now where one had fallen. The cause, a lethal combination of harmful substances. He was just 33. In the aftermath, the world mourned. Friends were devastated. Fans were stunned. The laughter stopped. John Belushi's passing wasn't just another tragedy in Hollywood. It was a wake-up call, a brutal reminder that fame, no matter how bright, can never fill the void inside. He burned like a supernova, brilliant, fast, and gone far too soon. Number 4. Chris Farley, the comedian who couldn't escape the darkness. Chris Farley illuminated every room he entered. A human force of laughter, energy, and fearless comedy. He was loud, he was wild, he was unforgettable. But what the world saw as hilarious chaos was often a cry for help. Farley wasn't just playing the part of the out-of-control guy. He embodied it. Behind the scenes, he was locked in a brutal war with dependency substances of all kinds. He tried to fight back. From Lorne Michaels to David Spade to Tom Arnold, they all knew he was slipping. Studios even mandated sobriety contracts, monitoring his every move while on set. But as soon as the cameras stopped rolling, so did his control. For a moment, it looked like he might turn things around. He had just wrapped filming Almost Heroes, was cast as the original voice of Shrek, and even spoke of Christmas plans. His friend recalled he was attending services, smiling more, feeling hopeful. Then came December 14th, 1997. Chris went on a 4-day binge of alcohol and substances. On the final night, he was with someone who later admitted to stealing from him and leaving as he collapsed on the floor. His final words, "Don't leave me." On December 18th, his brother John found him unresponsive in their Chicago apartment. He was 33, the same age as his idol, John Belushi, when he passed from similar circumstances. Toxicology reports found multiple harmful substances in his system. His heart, already compromised by years of abuse, simply gave out. Chris Farley didn't pass because he wanted to. He succumbed because dependency deceived him. Told him he'd be fine. Told him he was alone. Told him this pain would pass, but it didn't. And now the world is left remembering someone who made us laugh while silently drowning in anguish. Number 5. Judy Garland, the girl who never got to go home. She sang Somewhere Over the Rainbow, but never found peace on this side of it. Judy Garland wasn't just a star. She was magic, America's sweetheart, the voice of a generation. But behind those sparkling eyes and radiant smile was a child crushed under the weight of fame. By the time she was 13, Judy was already a workhorse at MGM. Studio executives didn't just control her career. They controlled her body, her food, her rest, her mind. Want to stay thin? Take these medications. Need to keep going? Take those. Need to rest? They called them pep pills. She called them survival. During the filming of The Wizard of Oz, she was just 16, forced to work grueling hours under brutal pressure, all while being medicated to keep her going. Her diet consisted of chicken soup, black coffee, and stimulants. Her downtime included sedatives. Hollywood didn't raise her, it exploited her. She matured, but the dependency grew with her. The medications didn't stop. Neither did the expectations. Judy became a mother, a wife, a divorced wife, and always a performer. She struggled with mental health, chronic exhaustion, and a haunting sense of never being enough. Her once bright career dimmed as her personal chaos spilled into the spotlight. Tardiness, breakdowns, hospital stays. By the late 1960s, she was barely holding on, performing in small clubs, underpaid, overmedicated, and completely drained. On June 26, 1969, just 12 days after her 47th birthday, Judy Garland was found unresponsive in a London bathroom. Cause: barbiturate toxicity. Officially, it was ruled accidental, but in truth, it was the slow, methodical destruction of a vulnerable soul by a system that glamorized her while silently breaking her. Judy Garland's story isn't just tragic, it's infuriating. She was a girl thrown to the wolves before she ever had a chance to be a child. A woman who gave the world her voice and passed without anyone truly hearing her cries. She never made it home. Number 6. River Phoenix. The boy who burned too bright too fast. He had the face of an angel and the soul of a rebel. River Phoenix wasn't just Hollywood's next big thing. He was different. A vegan, an activist, a poet in a rock star's body. He didn't play the role of the tortured youth. He embodied it. And when he passed, the world lost more than a rising star. It lost a generation's hope. October 31st, 1993. The Viper Room, West Hollywood. River, just 23, steps outside the club, trembling. Minutes later, he collapses on the sidewalk, convulsing in front of his younger brother, Joaquin, and his girlfriend, actress Samantha Mathis. He's rushed to the hospital. He doesn't make it. The cause? Acute multiple substance intoxication. Harmful substances combined in a fatal speedball. It didn't make sense. River wasn't supposed to be this person. He didn't party, he didn't go to treatment centers, he preached clean living and avoided the Hollywood toxicity. But somewhere in the shadows, something changed. In the days leading up to his passing, close friend and Red Hot Chili Peppers guitarist John Frusciante later admitted they were on a days-long binge, no rest, no food. A spiral so fast and so quiet that no one saw it coming until it was too late. His passing rocked Hollywood. River wasn't another tabloid tragedy. He was the future in artists like Brando, Dean, DiCaprio before DiCaprio. He turned down blockbusters, favored indie films, and carried a raw emotional depth that made you believe every line he spoke. He had it all and wanted none of the fakeness. But like so many before him, the pressure, the expectation, the weight of being different became too much. He passed outside a club owned by Johnny Depp. He passed in front of the people who loved him most. He passed because for just one night, he let the darkness in, and it never let go. River Phoenix's passing wasn't about substances. It was about vulnerability, about a young man who didn't belong in the machine trying to survive it anyway. He didn't fade. He flashed brilliant and brief, and left behind a light that still haunts the world he left too soon. Number 7. Heath Ledger. The Joker who couldn't find peace anymore. He gave us one of the greatest performances in cinema history, and it consumed him. Heath Ledger didn't just play the Joker. He became him. Twisted, brilliant, unhinged. A role so dark, so consuming, it blurred the line between art and reality. But even before The Dark Knight, Heath was already fighting internal battles the public couldn't see. Fame had come fast. 10 Things I Hate About You, A Knight's Tale, Brokeback Mountain. But with the praise came pressure, anxiety, insomnia, a mind that wouldn't shut off, a body that couldn't rest. He once said he was lucky to get 2 hours of sleep a night. To cope, he turned to medications, pain relievers, sleeping aids, anti-anxiety prescriptions, a cocktail of silence for a storm that never stopped. In 2007, his relationship with Michelle Williams, the mother of his daughter Matilda, ended. Friends say he was devastated, withdrawn, obsessed with his craft, but slipping further from reality. On January 22, 2008, Heath was found unresponsive in his New York apartment by his housekeeper and a massage therapist. Paramedics arrived, but it was too late. Heath Ledger was gone at 28. The toxicology report revealed 6 prescription medications in his system, including oxycodone, hydrocodone, diazepam, temazepam, and doxylamine. All legal, all lethal when combined. Official cause: accidental toxicity. But was it really an accident? Or just the inevitable collapse of someone crushed under the weight of genius? His posthumous Oscar for The Dark Knight felt like both a triumph and a funeral. We applauded the performance while ignoring the pain that created it. Heath didn't pass chasing a high. He passed trying to rest, trying to escape a mind that was too fast, too deep, too loud. His friends said he was unwell, exhausted, haunted. And yet he gave everything until there was nothing left. We remember the makeup, the laughter, the chaos of the Joker. But the real tragedy is that when the cameras stopped rolling, no one was there to tell Heath Ledger he could stop performing. Number 8. Marilyn Monroe, the goddess who passed alone. She was the ultimate American icon. The blonde bombshell, the breathy voice, the smile that could stop time. But behind the red lips and white dress, Marilyn Monroe was quietly falling apart. She wasn't just a symbol. She was a woman in pain. Born Norma Jean, abandoned by her father, and raised in foster homes, Marilyn spent her entire life searching for love, stability, and peace. Hollywood gave her fame, but never safety. And when the world saw a fantasy, Marilyn lived a nightmare. Her days were filled with cameras and chaos. Her nights, loneliness, insomnia, and pills. Barbiturates to rest, amphetamines to wake up, alcohol to quiet the noise. A daily chemical balancing act, one that was always teetering. By the 1,960 seconds, her image was unstoppable, but her personal life was crumbling. Failed marriages, public scrutiny, mental health spiraling. She was reportedly fired from her last film for being unreliable, but no one asked why she couldn't function. She didn't want to leave. She just wanted the pain to stop. On August 5th, 1962, Marilyn was found lifeless in her Los Angeles home. She was 36. The official cause, barbiturate toxicity. But theories ran wild. Was it accidental? Was it political? Was it preventable? What we do know is this: Marilyn Monroe didn't suffer this fate because she was weak. She suffered because she was exhausted from pretending, performing, and carrying the unbearable weight of being Marilyn Monroe. She once said, "Fame doesn't fulfill you. It warms you a bit, but that warmth is temporary." Her passing joined a tragic club: Judy Garland, Margaret Sullivan, women broken by fame and dulled by prescriptions. Marilyn didn't perish from glamour. She perished from a world that loved her image, but never loved her. Number 9. Philip Seymour Hoffman, the genius who couldn't escape himself. He was one of the greatest actors of his generation, a master of nuance, depth, and darkness. Philip Seymour Hoffman didn't just play broken men, he understood them, because behind every Oscar, every standing ovation, was someone quietly battling a monster he couldn't outrun. From Capote to the Master, Hoffman vanished into every role. He could make you laugh, ache, recoil, and weep, often in the same scene. But off-camera, he fought a very different war: dependency. Hoffman first struggled with substance issues in his early 20s, eventually getting clean and staying sober for over 20 years. Then came the relapse. In 2012, after decades of sobriety, he started consuming alcohol again, and then harder substances. By 2014, it had taken over. Friends saw the change. He looked tired, lost, fading. On February 2nd, 2014, Philip was found unresponsive in his New York apartment, a syringe still in his arm. The scene was horrifying. 50 bags of harmful substances, used and unused, needles, prescription bottles, and a burned spoon. The toxicology report confirmed a lethal mix of multiple substances, including fentanyl. He was 46. To the public, the news was unthinkable. Not Hoffman, not the brilliant, thoughtful private artist. Not the man who once said, "If I don't stop, I'm going to perish." But dependency doesn't care how smart you are, how loved, or how talented. It doesn't care if you've won an Oscar or if you're a father of 3. It just wants more. Hoffman knew the risks. He tried to get help. He even had medication in his apartment to manage his condition. But it wasn't enough. What ended Hoffman's life wasn't just the substances. It was silence, shame, the idea that admitting relapse meant failure. But relapse is part of recovery. And the more we ignore that, the more we lose the ones we can't replace. Philip Seymour Hoffman gave everything to his craft. But in the end, no one could play the part of saving him, not even himself. Number 10. Anna Nicole Smith, the bombshell who broke under the spotlight. She was blonde, bold, and built like a fantasy. Anna Nicole Smith didn't just turn heads, she stopped time. A Playboy playmate turned reality TV queen, she lived loud, laughed louder, and became a walking headline. But fame for her was never glamorous. It was a ticking time bomb. In the 90 seconds, she became a tabloid sensation, not just for her curves, but for her scandalous marriage to 9-year-old oil tycoon J. Howard Marshall. After his passing, a bitter legal battle over his fortune made her a national punchline. But behind the headlines was a woman quietly unraveling. The truth. Anna was already deep in dependency on prescription medications. It began in her early 20s after cosmetic surgery. According to friends, she quickly became dependent on pain relievers like Vicodin, Lortabs, and muscle relaxers. Add Valium and Xanax to the mix, and she was riding a chemical roller coaster, trying to numb pain the world couldn't see. Her reality show may have brought laughs, but insiders saw the cracked, slurred speech, erratic behavior, blackouts. By the early 2000s, Anna wasn't just dependent, she was trapped. The glamorous blonde bombshell had become a tragic figure, chasing comfort in bottles while pretending everything was fine. Then came the most crushing blow, the loss of her 20-year-old son, Daniel, in 2006. Less than 5 months later, on February 8, 2007, she was found unresponsive in a Florida hotel room. Despite desperate attempts to revive her, she was pronounced gone that afternoon. Cause: accidental toxicity from a lethal cocktail of sleeping pills, anti-anxiety medications, and pain relievers. She was 39. Anna Nicole Smith wasn't just a punchline. She was a woman broken by fame, grief, and a system that consumes beauty and discards it when the cameras stop rolling. She wanted love. She wanted peace. But Hollywood only gave her noise. And in the end, she passed the way she lived under the harsh light of public judgment, searching for silence. Number 11. Brad Renfro, Hollywood's lost boy. He was supposed to be the next big thing. At just 11 years old, Brad Renfro exploded onto the screen in The Client, holding his own alongside Tommy Lee Jones and Susan Sarandon. He wasn't trained, he wasn't polished, but he was real, raw, unfiltered. You didn't watch Brad, you felt him. But the industry that crowned him never protected him. Fame hit fast, too fast. By 15, he was consuming alcohol, smoking, experimenting. By 18, he was arrested. Harmful substances crept into his life like a slow whisper, one he couldn't silence. The headlines followed: treatment, relapse, petty offenses, probation. Hollywood had forgotten about him, but the pain never forgot. Friends said he wanted to get clean. He still auditioned, still believed he had one last comeback in him. But on January 15, 2008, Brad was found unresponsive in his Los Angeles apartment. He was just 25. The cause: fatal toxicity from harmful substances. He passed 4 years younger than the character he played in The Client. There was no media frenzy, no outpouring of tribute, just a quiet end for a kid who once lit up the screen. Brad Renfro's story isn't glamorous. It's not cinematic. It's tragic, and it's far too common. Which of these stories resonated with you the most? If you found value in this tribute, please share your thoughts. It helps keep the memory of these stars alive. Television's most beloved fathers weren't always who they seemed. Behind family dinners and gentle advice, some of Hollywood's most famous TV dads carried private truths that could have ended their careers overnight. They married, raised children on screen, and smiled through years of whispers, blackmail threats, and studio pressure. The industry demanded one face in public and permitted an entirely different reality in private, so long as nobody spoke. These are 13 classic TV patriarchs whose real lives were anything but sitcom perfect. Paul Lynde, Uncle Arthur, Bewitched, and Hollywood Squares. Paul Lynde was one of the funniest human beings, American, television ever produced. And he spent most of his professional life being consumed by the machinery that profited from his talent. His razor delivery and perfectly calibrated camp made him a household name through his recurring role as Uncle Arthur on Bewitched, and as the permanent center square on Hollywood Squares throughout the 1970s. He was genuinely, brilliantly gifted, and the industry understood exactly how to package that gift without ever allowing him to be fully human on screen. When a network attempted to repackage Lynde as a conventional suburban father on The Paul Lynde Show in 1972, the results were revealing. The show dressed him in the costume of normality, wife, home, family. But his timing and instincts kept undermining the premise from inside. Audiences laughed and then shifted uncomfortably, sensing a gap between the role and the man filling it that nobody could quite articulate in polite conversation. The show lasted one season. Off camera, Lynde was openly himself among a close circle of friends, throwing elaborate parties at his Beverly Hills home, surrounded by people who didn't require him to perform a version of himself. he didn't recognize. But the gap between that private freedom and his public professional cage was vast, and it produced a bitterness that colleagues found difficult and that Lind himself medicated heavily. He snapped at producers who collected paychecks from his coded persona, while simultaneously demanding he never speak plainly. He made jokes about himself before anyone else could make them first, a defense mechanism so practiced it had become indistinguishable from his natural personality. A specific incident in 1965 left permanent marks. His close companion James Davidson fell from a window at the Sir Francis Drake Hotel in San Francisco following an evening of heavy drinking. The incident generated press coverage, police involvement, and the kind of public exposure that Lind had spent years engineering his life to prevent. The fear that followed fear of what people knew, of what they might print, of who might decide to connect visible dots, fed a paranoia that never fully lifted. Lind passed away alone in January 1982 from a heart attack. His brilliance remains intact on film and tape. The sadness of a life lived almost entirely as entertainment for an industry that took everything and permitted almost nothing in return is equally documented, written into the bitterness his colleagues remember and into the silence that surrounded him at the end. Sebastian Cabot Mr. French Family Affair, 1966, 1971. Sebastian Cabot arrived in American television, already polished by decades of British stage and film work, and he brought every ounce of that training to Family Affair. As Mr. French, the impeccably mannered butler, tasked with raising 3 orphan children in a Manhattan penthouse, Cabot took a premise that could easily have collapsed into absurdity and transformed it into something that felt genuinely dignified. His Shakespearean grounding gave the character a weight that the scripts alone couldn't have provided. He never married and never offered public details about his private life beyond occasional references to his love of gourmet cooking, his appreciation for fine wine, and his enjoyment of a well-set table. That silence was complete and consistent across decades of interviews and public appearances. Questions about romantic relationships were met with elegant redirection, a warm anecdote about food, a reflection on craft, a graceful pivot back to the work. He was too skilled a performer to let deflection look like deflection. In Hollywood circles, it was quietly understood that Cabot kept male companions, though the specifics remained appropriately vague and well-managed. He maintained residences in both London and Los Angeles, which gave him the practical advantage of keeping his 2 worlds sufficiently separated that gossip had difficulty accumulating into anything printable. The geography was as useful as the silence. His physical presence, he weighed considerably over 200 pounds for much of his career, became part of his persona in a way he actively cultivated. He made food jokes at his own expense with practiced timing and genuine warmth. The self-deprecating humor served multiple purposes simultaneously. It was genuinely funny, it humanized him, and it reliably redirected any conversation that was drifting toward territory he preferred to leave unexplored. Cabot passed away suddenly from a stroke in 1977. The tributes were warm, plentiful, and almost entirely professional in focus. Rock Hudson Macmillan and wife, 1971, 1977. Rock Hudson was, for a significant portion of the 1950s and 1960s, the most bankable romantic lead in Hollywood. Tall, extraordinarily handsome, and equipped with a natural ease on camera that studios spent years trying to manufacture in other actors. His comedy partnership with Doris Day across 3 films produced some of the era's most commercially successful pictures. Universal and the wider studio system invested enormously in building and maintaining his image as the ultimate embodiment of heterosexual American masculinity. That investment required substantial infrastructure. Hudson's management arranged a publicized marriage in 1955 to Phyllis Gates, his agent's secretary, which ran for 3 years before ending quietly. The marriage served its intended purpose in the press. Behind the arrangements, Hudson maintained long-term relationships with men throughout his career, protected by a network of loyal publicists, studio employees, and insiders who understood that their professional function included the management of information that could never reach print. His television work on Macmillan and wife extended the image into a new decade, a charming, competent San Francisco police commissioner navigating cases alongside his younger wife, played by Susan St. James. The domestic warmth of the series reinforced the public construction that had been built over 20 years. Colleagues on the series knew pieces of the reality. The code of silence that governed the industry held as firmly in 1975 as it had in 1955. In July 1985, Hudson became one of the first major public figures to publicly acknowledge his HIV-positive status, a disclosure that arrived after European press had already broken the story and that his team had attempted to manage. The acknowledgement transformed him overnight from a symbol of a certain kind of American masculinity into an unexpected and deeply significant catalyst for public attention to a health crisis that political leadership had largely chosen to ignore. Friends who had known him for decades described the courage it took to be visible in that moment. He passed away in October 1985. The public conversation his disclosure accelerated changed the trajectory of how the crisis was covered, funded, and understood by ordinary Americans. Tab Hunter various film and television appearances. 1950s, 1960s. Tab Hunter was Warner Brothers' most precisely manufactured teen idol of the fan. 1950s, blonde, blue-eyed, photographed endlessly, and plastered across enough magazine covers to wallpaper a considerable building. The studio understood exactly what they had in Hunter and invested accordingly in constructing a public persona that would sell to the largest possible audience. A series of publicized romantic relationships with female co-stars, carefully timed press appearances, and a biographical narrative built around the boy-next-door wholesomeness that post-war America found deeply reassuring. Behind the studio's carefully constructed exterior, Hunter was living his own life entirely, including a significant relationship with actor Anthony Perkins that lasted several years during the period when both men were at the peak of their careers. In Perkins, Hunter had found someone who understood the particular pressures of existing inside the same manufacturing system, navigating the same demands with the same careful division between professional surface and private reality. In 1955, Confidential magazine, the period's most aggressive celebrity gossip publication, which operated effectively as an extortion operation against Hollywood studios, threatened to run a story about Hunter. The studio's publicity apparatus moved into damage control with professional speed, successfully redirecting the magazine's editorial attention toward a less economically significant target. The threat passed. Hunter's image survived intact. In 2005, Hunter published his autobiography, Tab Hunter Confidential, telling his story fully and on his own terms at the age of 74. The book was received as both a personal reclamation and a cultural document, a first-person account of how the studio system treated human beings as brand assets to be managed, adjusted, and protected from their own authentic identities. The 2015 documentary of the same name brought those accounts to a new generation. Hunter passed away in 2018, having spent his final decades farming and living quietly in California with his long-term partner Alan Glazer. Robert Young, Jim Anderson, Father Knows Best, 1,954, 1,960. On screen as Jim Anderson on Father Knows Best, Robert Young represented the fully realized ideal of the post-war American patriarch, a man who solved family problems with patience, confidence, and gentle authority, who never raised his voice beyond what the lesson required, who modeled restraint and emotional stability as if they were simply natural conditions of adult male life. The series ran for 6 seasons, won multiple Emmy Awards, and genuinely shaped how millions of Americans understood what a father was supposed to be. The contrast between that image and Young's private experience was stark enough to be painful. Behind the steady Anderson exterior, Young was privately struggling with severe depression and alcohol dependency that required repeated hospitalizations across the years when the show was at its cultural peak. Studio publicists worked carefully and consistently to ensure that none of this reached print. Young's team understood that even a single story about psychiatric treatment or substance dependency would damage the brand beyond repair. So the work of concealment was maintained, with the same professionalism applied to every other aspect of the production. Some biographers have noted that certain relationships with male colleagues during Young's career appeared to carry emotional weight beyond professional friendship, but the evidence available remains circumstantial and is treated as such by serious researchers. What is fully and unambiguously documented is the mental health struggle, a reality that Young himself eventually discussed openly in later life, helping to move public conversation about depression in a more honest direction decades after the fact. Young channeled the same trustworthy, steady face into a long-running series of coffee commercials after Father Knows Best concluded, selling domestic warmth and reliability to the same audiences who had absorbed those qualities from Jim Anderson. Friends said he could be warm and genuinely charming in private, then disappear behind an internal wall with no visible transition, as if the effort of maintaining the public self required periodic complete withdrawal. He passed away in 1998 at the age of 91. Long after he had spoken publicly about the struggles the studio system had spent years hiding. William Frawley, Fred Mertz, I Love Lucy, and Bub My Three Sons, William Frawley had already built himself into a significant piece of television history before My Three Sons cast him as Bub O'Casey. As Fred Mertz on I Love Lucy from 1951 to 1957, he turned gruff, perfectly calibrated comic timing into an art form, making the cheap, resentful neighbor one of the most recognizable supporting characters in the medium's history. His instincts were extraordinary. He could land a reaction in a single take that other actors might have spent an afternoon trying to find. The man behind those reactions was substantially more difficult than the character. Colleagues across his career described him as funny, in sharp, unpredictable flashes, and then genuinely hard to be around for long stretches, a mood that never seemed to fully lift, a bitterness that felt constitutional rather than circumstantial. On set, a brilliant take might be followed immediately by hours of sustained complaints about everything surrounding it. His drinking was heavy, visible, and a consistent source of tension with producers who needed him functional on schedule. His combative temper was documented often enough by enough different people that it stops being anecdote and becomes biography. His marriage to vaudeville performer Edna Louise broke apart after 6 years, and he never attempted and another. In his later years, the professional warmth that audiences associated with Fred Mertz and Bub was rarely visible in the man himself. Some contemporaries from his vaudeville years, a performance world with considerably looser social rules than the emerging television industry, spoke quietly about close relationships with younger men during that period. But the accounts were never documented beyond rumor and remained unconfirmed throughout his life and after. Frawley passed away in 1966 after collapsing on a Hollywood sidewalk, not far from the places where his most famous characters had lived in American living rooms. The warmth he had projected so effectively for so many years was a professional achievement. The person underneath it had spent decades alone. Hugh Beaumont Ward Cleaver, Leave It to Beaver, 1957, 1963. Hugh Beaumont stands as something of an outlier in this particular collection, and it is worth being direct about that. As Ward Cleaver on Leave It to Beaver, he embodied a specific kind of cardigan-clad, measured paternal wisdom that became one of the defining images of suburban American fatherhood in the late 1950s. His voice was calm, his authority was never cruel, and his advice was always right. He had been ordained as a Methodist minister before turning to acting, which gave his quiet moral authority on screen a biographical grounding that other actors couldn't have manufactured. The available evidence about Beaumont's private life points, somewhat unusually for this list, toward genuine consistency between the public image and the private man. He married once and stayed married. He had 3 children. His son Hunter, colleagues from the series, and people who knew him personally during and after the show's run described him as a genuinely principled, deeply private man who was exactly as steady in his daily life as Ward Cleaver appeared on screen. Jerry Mathers, who played Beaver, has spoken warmly about Beaumont's authentic character across decades of interviews. After Leave It to Beaver concluded, Beaumont stepped away from acting and became genuinely reclusive, a choice that generated biographical gaps and, in some retrospective accounts, questions about what that withdrawal concealed. The honest assessment is that those questions are not answered by any documented evidence. He passed away in 1982, and several mysteries about the quieter chapters of his later life remain simply unanswered. The more accurate framing is that Hugh Beaumont was a very private man, rather than a man with a hidden life, a distinction that matters. Van Johnson. Various film and television roles. 1940s, 1970s. Van Johnson occupied a specific and carefully managed position in MGM's golden era lineup, the freckled, red-haired, genuinely likable boy next door, who made audiences feel comfortable and safe in a way that more overtly glamorous stars sometimes didn't. He was extraordinarily popular with female audiences during the 1940s and maintained a recognizable presence in film and television across several subsequent decades. The management of Johnson's image at MGM involved studio head Louis B. Mayer in ways that were unusually direct, even by the standards of a system famous for controlling its talents' lives. When Johnson's close relationship with fellow actor Keenan Wynn began attracting attention from the studio's internal monitoring system, Mayer responded by essentially engineering a marriage. Wynn's wife, Evie, was persuaded through a combination of financial incentive and studio pressure to divorce Keenan and marry Van instead. The resulting arrangement suited the studio's publicity requirements considerably better than the alternative. Van and Evie Johnson's marriage lasted until 1968. Johnson was notably silent about his private life throughout his career and after it, giving interviews that were warm, professionally gracious, and entirely uninformative about anything personal. He continued working in film and television through the 1970s and 1980s, eventually relocating to New York, where he became a familiar figure in theater circles. He passed away in 2008 at the age of 86. Having maintained his professional dignity and his biographical privacy in roughly equal measure across a career spanning more than 6 decades. Cesar Romero, various television appearances, and the Joker, Batman, 1966. 1968. Cesar Romero was one of Hollywood's most enduring professional presences, a Cuban-American actor whose career extended from the 1930s through the 1990s, encompassing Fox musicals, westerns, dramatic roles, and his late career reinvention as a deliciously campy Joker opposite Adam West's Batman in the 1960s television series. He was charming in print, genuinely funny in interviews, and socially ubiquitous in Hollywood circles for decades. Romero never married and was consistently open about that fact in interviews, framing his bachelorhood as a lifestyle choice, reflecting his love of independence, travel, and social variety, rather than as anything requiring further explanation. The industry press accepted this framing for years, partly because Romero delivered it with such effortless conviction, and partly because he was useful to have around at the parties and events that generated the celebrity coverage studios depended on. Among people who knew him, well, including numerous colleagues who worked with him across decades, it was straightforwardly understood that Romero was gay and had been throughout his career. He maintained a private social life that he never publicized and never discussed in professional contexts. Unlike some contemporaries who lived in genuine fear of exposure, Romero appeared to navigate his situation with relative ease, a product of his particular combination of charm, social intelligence, and the protective cover of his status as an entertaining, commercially viable, publicly beloved figure who was simply never going to be a useful target for a hostile press. He passed away in 1994 at the age of 86. One of the longest careers in Hollywood history concluded with his private life intact and largely undisturbed. The stories circulated among people who had known him, as they always do, but they circulated warmly and without damage. In that sense, Romero managed something relatively rare, a version of discretion that didn't require suffering. George Nader, various film and television appearances. 1950s, 1960s. George Nader was positioned by Universal in the mid-1950s as a potential major star, physically imposing, conventionally handsome in exactly the ways the studio wanted, and competent enough on screen that the investment seemed reasonable. The studio gave him the full promotional treatment, magazine spreads, manufactured biographical details, the standard apparatus of mid-century Hollywood star building. What made Nader's situation somewhat unusual in retrospect was his close friendship with Rock Hudson and Hudson's manager Henry Wilson, a triangle that illustrated with particular clarity how the system managed multiple careers simultaneously. When Confidential magazine was preparing damaging stories about Hudson in the mid-1950s, Wilson negotiated with the publication by offering stories about other clients instead. Nader's name was among those offered as a trade. The story about Nader ran. Hudson's image was protected. Nader later described the experience in interviews as a professional sacrifice made by his manager on his behalf without his full knowledge or consent. An episode that illustrated precisely how the studio system's protections functioned as a form of controlled damage distribution rather than genuine support. Nader's career trajectory shifted considerably after that period. He worked steadily but never reached the level that early universal publicity had suggested was possible. He eventually relocated to Germany, where he worked extensively in European productions through the 1960s. He and his long-term partner, Mark Miller, a friendship-turned-partnership that lasted decades, eventually retired to Palm Springs, where Nader wrote science fiction novels in his later years. He passed away in 2002, having spent his final decades in the quiet domesticity that his Hollywood years had made systematically impossible. These actors helped shape America's idea of fatherhood, family, and masculine authority while navigating private lives. The industry demanded they conceal. Some found peace in their later years. Others carried the weight of the concealment to the end. All of them survived a system that treated authenticity as a liability and human lives as brand management problems to be solved. Hollywood has seen some heavy smokers over the years. Here are the 25 biggest chain smokers in Hollywood history. 1. Jack Webb. Jack Webb was a renowned actor, producer, and screenwriter best known for his iconic role as Sergeant Joe Friday in the classic TV series Dragnet. His no-nonsense portrayal of a hard-hitting detective became a staple of television, and he became a symbol of the film noir era. Despite his professional success and widespread recognition, Webb faced personal struggles, particularly with smoking, which had a significant impact on his health and ultimately contributed to his early departure. Webb struggled with asthma from a young age, dealing with the condition from as early as 6 years old. His smoking reached its peak at 3 packs a day, and during the height of his fame on Dragnet, he was known to smoke up to 4 packs daily. His smoking habits were well known, and in 1954, he even appeared in an advertisement for Chesterfield cigarettes, further promoting the habit. Webb was once advised by a doctor to quit smoking and follow a special diet due to concerns over a potential ulcer that might have been cancerous. However, he refused to follow the advice and chose not to seek medical help again. Unfortunately, this decision contributed to a deterioration in his health over the years, making him appear older than his actual age. Jack Webb passed on in 1982 at the age of 62 after complaining of severe stomach pain. His story serves as a tragic reminder of the impact smoking can have on both health and life expectancy. 2. Carrie Hamilton. Carrie Hamilton, the daughter of comedy legend Carol Burnett and TV producer Joe Hamilton, was born into the spotlight. She followed in her parents' footsteps, landing roles in hit TV shows like Fame and even guest starring in Beverly Hills 90210. Carrie was also a talented Broadway actress with a bright future ahead. But behind the scenes, Carrie struggled. After her parents divorced, she was raised by her mom and faced a lot of pressure to live up to her famous family. To cope, she started smoking young and eventually turned to chemical substances like the herb, sedatives, and powdered stimulants. Her battle with dependency became public, and eventually, she entered rehab in Houston to try to get clean. Carrie did get sober and quit smoking, but by then it was too late. In 2001, she was diagnosed with lung cancer. Just a few months into treatment, doctors discovered the cancer had spread to her brain. Despite going through chemotherapy and surgery, Carrie passed away in January 2002 at just 38 years old from pneumonia related to her cancer. 3. Charles Lane. Charles Lane, an actor with one of Hollywood's longest careers, was born in 1905 and became widely recognized for playing stern, scowling authority figures. His memorable roles included a hotel clerk in Smart Money, appearances in Mr. Deeds Goes to Town, You Can't Take It With You, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, and his portrayal of a no-nonsense character in the TV series I Love Lucy. Lane often embodied grumpy clerks, doctors, judges, and middle management figures, making him a staple of classic Hollywood for over 6 decades. Lane was a heavy smoker, reportedly going through packs of cigarettes daily. It wasn't until he began facing severe health problems that he finally decided to quit. Reflecting on his habit in an interview, He humorously acknowledged the dangers of smoking, saying, "I know smoking ends people, and I must be the exception." Even though he lived an extraordinary 102 years, Lane's later life was marked by complications from his smoking. In 1990, he experienced significant breathing difficulties. When asked about his smoking, Lane's response showcased his wit. He joked that he had quit just 45 minutes earlier. His son later confirmed that Lane had smoked a pack a day for an astonishing 70 years, only stopping when his health forced him to confront the habit. 4. Snoop Dogg. Snoop Dogg, whose real name is Calvin Cortazar Broadus Jr., is a towering figure in the world of hip-hop and pop culture, rising to fame in the early 1990s through his collaborations with Dr. Dre. Snoop quickly became known for his smooth, laid-back delivery and distinctive voice. His debut album, Doggy Style, 1993, was a massive hit, and over the years, he solidified his place as one of rap's greatest with successful albums like Thaw Dogfather and No Limit Top Dog. However, one of the most defining aspects of Snoop Dogg's public persona is his love for botanicals, which has become a major part of his image. Snoop has been an outspoken advocate for herbal use, frequently seen smoking both on and off camera. He has even launched his own plant-based line, Leafs by Snoop, further cementing his connection to that culture. His heavy use has also raised concerns about its long-term impact on his health. Smoking organic products regularly, especially over decades, can affect lung function and lead to respiratory issues. Though Snoop has not publicly reported any major health problems related to smoking, his choice to embrace this lifestyle at a high level could have negative effects on his lungs and overall well-being. 5. Barbara Stanwyck. Ruby Catherine Stevens, who took on the stage name Barbara Stanwyck after her Broadway debut in 1926, was an American actress, model, and dancer. She gained fame for his performances in classic films such as Stella Dallas, The Lady Eve, Double Indemnity, and the acclaimed Western television series, The Big Valley. Following her film career, she moved to television, winning 3 Emmy Awards for The Barbara Stanwyck Show, The Big Valley, and the miniseries, The Thornbirds. However, behind her remarkable performances lay a lifelong struggle with smoking addiction, which affected her career. Introduced to this harmful lifestyle at a young age, she began smoking at just 9 years old, using cigarettes to cope with various life pressures and pains. Stanwyck continued to smoke throughout her acting career, which ultimately led to severe health issues. In 1982, while filming The Thornbirds, she inhaled special effects smoke on set, which may have contributed to her developing bronchitis alongside her long-standing smoking habit. As her breathing difficulties intensified, she had to refuse roles and reduce her workload. Although she eventually quit smoking due to her health issues, Barbara Stanwyck left this world in 1990 at the age of 82 from congestive heart failure and chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. 6. Wiz Khalifa. Wiz Khalifa, born Cameron Jibril Tomaz on September 8 in 1987, is an American rapper, singer, and songwriter best known for his 2011 hit single Black and Yellow and his 2011 album Rolling Papers. His career took off after signing with Warner Brothers Records in 2007, and his distinctive style, blending hip-hop with elements of pop and rock, garnered a massive fan base. Wiz's success continued with hits like See You Again from the Furious 7 soundtrack, which became a global anthem. Beyond music, he has made a name for himself as a businessman, launching his own herbal brand, Khalifa Kush, and advocating for plant legalization. However, throughout his career, Khalifa has struggled with a well-known cigarette addiction. His frequent use of tobacco products, which he has openly discussed in interviews, has affected his overall health. Despite his healthy image and active lifestyle, including fitness routines and his advocacy for smoking the herb, smoking cigarettes can lead to a range of health issues. Cigarette smoking is linked to cardiovascular disease, lung damage, and an increased risk of various cancers, making it a serious concern for someone as publicly active as Wiz Khalifa. Although he has shown a preference for botanicals, his cigarette use has remained a persistent challenge. The addictive nature of nicotine can also affect his energy levels, stamina, and vocal health, potentially impacting his ability to perform. While Khalifa's personal life and career continue to flourish, his battle with cigarette addiction remains a complex aspect of his journey. 7. John Candy. John Candy was a beloved Canadian actor and comedian known for his roles in classic films like Planes, Trains and Automobiles, Uncle Buck, and Cool Runnings. His career, which spanned 3 decades, seemed full of promise. It all began with his work on the Canadian comedy show SCTV, and later he made a name for himself in Hollywood. However, John's struggles with smoking and substance use started at just 17 years old, and they only got worse over time. He also had issues with his weight, largely due to poor eating habits. These health problems began to impact his career. His smoking and weight led to frequent illnesses and left him physically drained. On March 4th, after finishing filming Wagons East in Durango, Mexico, he had a quiet dinner of spaghetti, took a shower, and went to bed. While sleeping, John suffered a fatal heart attack. He was just 43 years old. Dr. Michael Hunter, a forensic pathologist, stated that John's eating habits played a big role in his premature end. He also mentioned that John's smoking addiction and possible stimulant use were likely contributing factors to the heart attack. 8. Kathleen Turner. Mary Kathleen Turner is an American actress recognized for her unique husky voice. She gained prominence in the 1980s with memorable roles in films such as Romancing the Stone, Body Heat, and Prizzy's Honor. Her deep voice became a hallmark of her performances. Unbeknownst to many, her heavy smoking contributed to this distinctive voice. While it initially played a role in shaping her career, it also led to significant long-term health issues. Kathleen Turner was often seen drinking and smoking, a lifestyle that eventually resulted in serious health complications. In her 40s, she began experiencing physical difficulties after being diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis. Her problems intensified while filming Serial Mom, as her feet swelled to the point where she could no longer wear shoes. Pain made it hard for her to sit, lie down, or stand. To cope with the pain, she turned to alcohol for relief, leading to addiction. As her health deteriorated, her acting opportunities diminished. The physical demands of acting became increasingly challenging. Consequently, her presence in major film roles has lessened, and she is now focusing more on television, voice work, and teaching acting at various universities in the U.S. 9. Raul Julia. Why spend $100 on therapy when you can buy a cigar for $25? Whatever issues arise will return anyway. So what? Just smoke another one. This quote is attributed to Raul Julia, a renowned Puerto Rican actor celebrated for his vibrant performances in both film and theater. He gained fame for his portrayal of Gomez Addams in The Addams Family and received Golden Globe nominations for films like Tempest, Kiss of the Spider Woman, and Moon over Parador. Raul Julia began smoking in college, maintaining the habit throughout his life, often smoking 1 to 2 cigars daily. His favorites included Cuban Punch, double Corona cigars, and those from the Dominican Republic. After years of consistent smoking, he was diagnosed with stomach cancer in 1994, a condition linked to smoking. Following surgery, he quickly returned to the set, but his health continued to decline. While filming The Burning Season in Mexico, he experienced food poisoning from sushi. After recovering, he went back to Mexico to complete the film despite losing weight and feeling physically weakened. Days later, he experienced severe abdominal pain and was hospitalized. Even as his health worsened, Raul Julia remained committed to his work, seen in his hospital bed reviewing the script for his upcoming role in Desperado. Sadly, his condition deteriorated further. He suffered a stroke, fell into a coma, and was placed on life support. Tragically, he departed this life 4 days later on October 24th, 1994. 10. Keith Richards. Keith Richards is a legendary musician, songwriter, singer, producer, and actor who has left an indelible mark on the music industry as a founding member of the Rolling Stones. His incredible talent and rebellious rock and roll lifestyle have become legendary. Richards also made waves in Hollywood with his portrayal of Captain Teague in Pirates of the Caribbean. At World's End, the 3rd installment of the popular franchise, smoking became a part of Richards' life at an early age, aligning with his rock star image. He was often seen with a cigarette in hand, a look that became a defining feature of his persona. Beyond smoking, Richards faced several legal issues related to illicit substances, with charges brought against him in 1967, twice in 1973, in 1977, and again in 1978. Following his 1978 arrest, Richards made the life-changing decision to quit opioids and later stopped using powdered stimulants in 2006. By 2016, Richards shared that he still consumed alcohol and herb in moderation. 2 years later, he told Rolling Stone he had significantly reduced his drinking, sticking to occasional beers or glasses of wine. In another interview, he revealed that he successfully quit smoking with the help of nicotine patches. Despite decades of heavy smoking and substance use, Richards has managed to avoid smoking-related illnesses, still thriving today. He continues to defy expectations, proving that even a rock legend can turn things around. 11. Walt Disney. We are starting up this list with the man who brought beloved characters like Mickey Mouse and iconic films like Snow White to life. Walt Disney. Walter Elias Disney, popularly known as Walt Disney, was an American animator and film producer. It might be a bit surprising to some of us that Walt Disney had a habit of smoking cigarettes, which eventually led to his passing. Walt was a heavy smoker and was mostly seen in pictures with a cigarette in hand. Professionally, Walt knew the negative image smoking could project, especially since he was creating entertainment for children. Walt was not allowed to be seen smoking in Saving Mr. Banks, and producers at Disneyland became wary of his smoking habit and digitally removed cigarettes from pictures of Walt in the park. By the early 1960s, Disney's health began to decline due to his heavy smoking. He was diagnosed with lung cancer in November 1966. Disney's health deteriorated badly. Walt Disney's life came to an end at the age of 65 in 1966. The official cause of his departure was circulatory collapse caused by the cancer. His loss was widely mourned in the entertainment industry. 12. Michael Landon. Michael Landon was a beloved actor, director, and producer famous for his iconic roles as Little Joe Cartwright on Bonanza and Jonathan Smith on Highway to Heaven. His warm on-screen presence and relatable characters made him a household name, and he was adored by millions of fans. However, behind his successful career, Landon had a dark side that would eventually deteriorate his health. His smoking and drinking habits. Landon's smoking addiction began early in his life and worsened as he gained fame. During his time on Bonanza, he was known to smoke up to 4 packs of unfiltered cigarettes a day. His addiction was so intense that it became a topic of conversation on set. Allison Arngrim, who played Nellie Oleson on Little House on the Prairie, shared a story where she accidentally discovered Landon's drinking habit while hiding in one of the set's trucks for a nap. She overheard him asking for a pour of Wild Turkey bourbon from a styrofoam cup. His smoking and drinking had become so prevalent that crew members gave him the nickname Socks because the scent of cigarette smoke had soaked into his socks. Despite his unhealthy habits, Landon maintained his status as a top actor and captivated audiences with his performances. But over time, his smoking began to impact his health. He started experiencing persistent coughing and shortness of breath, which interfered with his work and energy levels. Although Landon quit smoking in 1989, the damage had already been done. In 1991, just 2 years later, he was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, which had spread to his liver and lymph nodes. He passed away at 54, leaving behind a legacy of great roles. 13. Tallulah Bankhead. Tallulah Bankhead, an iconic American actress celebrated for her bold personality, distinctive deep voice, and glamorous lifestyle, battled a smoking habit that had a profound impact on her career, health, and eventual untimely passing. A member of one of America's most prominent political families, she rose to fame with her magnetic performances, including her award-winning role in Alfred Hitchcock's Lifeboat. Bankhead's love affair with smoking and partying began long before Hollywood. Her father warned her to steer clear of alcohol and men when she moved to New York, but the wild gatherings at the Algonquin Hotel introduced her to herb and powdered stimulants. Smoking became an integral part of her image, with her intake reportedly reaching up to 150 cigarettes a day. Her husky voice, which became her trademark, was largely attributed to her smoking habit. After a string of unsuccessful roles, she returned to the U.S. in 1931 and immersed herself in Hollywood's party culture, hosting notorious gatherings at her North Stanley Avenue home. The pressure to meet public expectations and her own personal struggles pushed her toward a self-destructive lifestyle. In 1933, she narrowly survived a life-threatening hysterectomy caused by an infection, believed to have been contracted from Gary Cooper or George Raft. Despite this close call, she defiantly told her doctor, "Don't think this has taught me a lesson. Tallulah continued her heavy smoking and frequent drinking, starring in numerous Broadway productions, films, and radio shows. Though her talent won her accolades, her health visibly declined over the years. Her lifelong smoking led to severe respiratory issues, including emphysema and chronic coughing. In 1968, at the age of 66, Bankhead succumbed to double pneumonia, a severe lung infection worsened by her emphysema and bronchitis. Her legacy as a Hollywood legend remains, though her story also serves as a cautionary tale about the toll of addiction. 14. Suzanne Pleshette. Suzanne Pleshette was one of Hollywood's most skilled actresses, renowned for her melodious voice and exceptional performances. Her distinctive voice added a memorable quality to her roles. Pleshette began her acting journey in the 1950s and gained significant fame during the 1960s and 1970s. She became well known for her appearances in films and television shows such as The Bob Newhart Show, Rome Adventure, Support Your Local Gunfighter, and Hot Stuff. In her later years, fans noticed a marked change in her voice, which became huskier partly due to her heavy smoking. This husky voice became one of her trademarks. Pleshette smoked at least 2 packs of cigarettes daily but quit in 1997, although the damage had already been done. In 2006, she was diagnosed with lung cancer, and the illness, along with its treatments, affected her health and career. She had to take time off from acting to prioritize her well-being, undergoing treatment and having 1 lung removed. Tragically, Suzanne Plechette's fight against lung cancer concluded with her departure on January 19, 2008, at the age of 70. 15. Pete Davidson. Pete Davidson is a well-known comedian and actor recognized for his role on Saturday Night Live and his appearances in various films like The King of Staten Island and Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. Known for his raw, often dark sense of humor, Pete quickly became a standout on SNL, earning a reputation for his witty sketches and unique delivery. However, behind his comedic success, Pete has faced personal struggles, including his well-documented issues with mental health and substance abuse. Davidson has been open about his battles with depression and anxiety, which started in his early teens. He has often used his struggles as material in his comedy, connecting with fans who relate to his experiences. Over the years, Pete has also struggled with chemical dependency, particularly with smoking herb, and using other compounds to cope with his emotional pain. Despite his humorous public image, Pete's personal life has been marked by these ongoing battles. In recent years, Pete has attempted to address his mental health by undergoing therapy and publicly discussing his challenges with addiction. His vulnerability in talking about his issues has earned him both support and criticism, but it has also sparked important conversations about mental health, especially in the entertainment industry. Despite these struggles, Pete continues to work in Hollywood, using his experiences to fuel his comedy. 16. George Formby. George Formby, a beloved British entertainer, also had his life overshadowed by his smoking habits. A cheerful actor, singer, and ukulele player, Formby was one of the UK's highest-paid stars during the 1930s and 1940s. Despite his charming performances, his well-being suffered from his daily consumption of 40 unfiltered cigarettes, which he jokingly referred to as coffin nails. Formby's smoking led to cardiovascular problems, and he suffered a major heart attack in 1949. Despite medical advice to slow down, he continued his heavy smoking habit. In April 1961, after his wife Beryl's funeral, Formby had another severe heart attack and barely survived. Tragically, on March 6, 1961, a final heart attack claimed his life at just 56. 17. Desi Arnaz. Desi Arnaz, a talented Cuban-American actor, producer, and musician, is best remembered for his iconic role as Ricky Ricardo on the beloved TV show I Love Lucy. Despite his success and popularity, Arnaz struggled privately with a heavy smoking habit, which eventually took a serious toll on his health and career. He began smoking at a young age, and it quickly became a constant part of his daily routine. The pressures of the entertainment industry, especially during the 1950s, played a significant role in Arnaz's addiction. Smoking was a regular feature of his on-screen persona, and he was often seen with a cigarette in hand on I Love Lucy. Despite this, Arnaz continued to deliver memorable performances and managed his production company, Desilu Productions, which he co-founded with his wife, Lucille Ball. As his smoking and drinking habits worsened, however, Arnez resisted entering Alcoholics Anonymous or any other formal treatment program for some time. Sadly, by the time he did try to turn his life around, the damage from years of smoking had already been done. In 1986, just a year after getting sober, Arnez was diagnosed with lung cancer. He underwent treatment, but the disease was too far advanced. Tragically, Arnez passed away in December of that year at the age of 69. Arnez's lung cancer was directly linked to his long-term smoking of Cuban cigars. His departure serves as a stark reminder of the long-term health risks associated with smoking, despite his many achievements in entertainment. 18. Audrey Hepburn. Audrey Hepburn was one of Hollywood's greatest screenplayers and fashion icons. She was ranked by the American Film Institute as the third greatest female screen legend from classical Hollywood cinema. She was best known for her role in movies like Roman Holiday, Breakfast at Tiffany's, and Wait Until Dark. Audrey started smoking at the early age of 15, but after gaining fame, she faced intense scrutiny from the public and the media. To cope with the stress and anxiety that came with her stardom, Audrey turned into a heavy smoker. She smoked up to 3 packs a day. Audrey didn't just smoke off the screen. She smoked on-screen in movies like Roman Holiday. Her smoking habit didn't affect her during her career until age 62, when she developed belly pain, and her doctors found cancer in her appendix. According to research, this cancer is in the same family of cancers as colon cancer, which is caused by smoking, and Hepburn was a lifelong heavy smoker. 19. Julie London. Julie London was an American actress and singer known for her husky voice and her hit song Cry Me a River. Her debut album, Julie Is Her Name, was inducted into the Grammy Hall of Fame in 2001. She also appeared in many movies and television shows like The Fat Man and Saddle the Wind. However, Julie London was also a heavy smoker, a habit that greatly impacted both her career and her health. She started smoking at the young age of 16. Smoking became a part of her daily routine, as she often smoked on set and off, consuming up to 3 packs of cigarettes a day. Julie's smoking habit affected her voice, which helped her gain roles. Unfortunately, it wasn't too long before this smoking habit took a toll on her health. As the years passed, her voice, which was once a major asset, started to suffer. The damage from constant smoking made it harder for her to perform at the same level, limiting her opportunities in both singing and acting. Her career began to decline. She got cast less frequently, and she stopped performing on stage. In 1995, she suffered a stroke. Despite getting some of the best treatments, her health deteriorated. In October 2000, she was admitted to the hospital after struggling to breathe, and she departed at the age of 74. 20. Al Lewis. Born in 1923 as Abraham Meister, Al Lewis was an American actor and activist, famously recognized for his role as Grandpa on the television series The Munsters. Beyond his acting career, Lewis was vocal in the 1980s and early 1990s, often criticizing government bodies like the Federal Communications Commission. He was typically seen smoking inexpensive cigars on set. Notably, Al Lewis was one of the few Hollywood actors who managed his smoking habits effectively, as it did not adversely impact his career or health. Unfortunately, he passed away in February 2006, at the age of 82, from natural causes. After his cremation, his ashes were fittingly placed in his favorite cigar box, a quirky tribute that reflected his vibrant life and lasting legacy as an iconic television character. 21. Johnny Cash. Johnny Cash, famously known as the Man in Black, was an American country singer, songwriter, and actor, recognized as one of the most influential musicians of the 20th century. His music often explored themes of sorrow, moral struggles, and redemption, with popular songs like Ring of Fire, Folsom Prison Blues, and I Walk the Line. In addition to his music career, he appeared in several films and television shows. Cash began smoking cigarettes at the young age of 13, and this habit persisted throughout much of his life. He was frequently seen smoking during tours, recording sessions, and in his personal moments. Alongside smoking, he also used controlled substances, and once spent a night in jail for attempting to bribe a police officer, who later discovered his stash of tablets. The long-term effects of smoking and substance use eventually took a toll on his health. In the 1980s, Cash faced serious health problems, particularly related to his heart. including pneumonia and bronchitis. He underwent several surgeries on his knees, heart, and jaw, which prompted him to quit smoking. Cash continued to create music into the 1990s and early 2000s. Tragically, he left us at the age of 71 due to complications from diabetes, just 4 months after the passing of his beloved wife from a heart attack on September 20th, 22. Burgess Meredith was an American actor and filmmaker known for his diverse roles in film, television, and theater. Throughout his life, he faced various challenges, including smoking habits that impacted his career and ultimately contributed to his passing. Born and raised in Cleveland, he quickly made a name for himself in Hollywood, becoming the first male actor to win the Saturn Award for Best Supporting Actor twice. He is particularly remembered for his roles as Mickey Goldmill in the Rocky series and as the Penguin in the 1960s Batman TV series. Meredith was a heavy smoker for much of his life, starting at a young age before quitting in the mid-1960s. He once recounted a terrifying nightmare in which he found himself trapped in a burning building because his cigarettes caught fire, which prompted him to give up smoking. Despite being smoke-free for 20 to 25 years, he had to resume smoking for his role as the Penguin, which required using a cigarette holder and led to frequent coughing during filming. To mask these coughing fits, Meredith developed the character's iconic quacking laugh. After the series ended, he immediately quit smoking once again. In his later years, Meredith encountered health issues, many of which were linked to his smoking history. He passed away in September 1997 at the age of 89 due to complications from Alzheimer's disease and melanoma. 23. Oscar Levant. Oscar Levant was a multi-talented American known for his work as a concert pianist, composer, conductor, author, radio game show panelist, television talk show host, comedian, and actor. He was celebrated for his sharp wit and humor, appearing in films such as Rhapsody in Blue, The Barclays of Broadway, An American in Paris, and The Bandwagon. Born in Pittsburgh in 1906 to Russian Jewish immigrants, Levant began smoking at a young age, which quickly escalated into a serious addiction. He was often seen with a cigarette in hand. Cigarettes were a constant presence in his life. Whether he was performing classical pieces, acting, or hosting talk shows. During his time as a local TV host, Levant often blinked excessively and clutched his heart, joking about it without realizing the seriousness of his condition. He faced various mental health challenges, once stating on air, "I've been in 4 hospitals in the last 6 years. I've had insulin shock therapy, electroshock therapy, and psychotherapy. One of these days I'm going to do this show in white tie and a straitjacket." Tragically, Levant succumbed to a heart attack at his home in Beverly Hills, California. His wife June discovered his body when she went to call him for an interview with Candice Bergen. His departure marked a heartbreaking end to the life of one of Hollywood's most talented figures. 24. Red Fox. John Elroy Sanford, better known as Red Fox, was an American stand-up comedian and actor who gained fame for his role as Fred Sanford on the popular 1970s TV show Sanford and Son. Growing up in a poor family, his journey to stardom exemplified the classic rags to riches story. His career began when a friend, Joanne Baker, informed him that a Baltimore nightclub named Gamby's was looking for a master of ceremonies. However, behind his comedic persona, Red Fox struggled with gambling and a heavy smoking habit. He was often seen with a cigarette in hand both on and off screen. Having started smoking at a young age, Fox was a 4 or 5 pack a day smoker and never quit. He even appeared in a Camel Cigarettes advertisement in the 1960s. By the late 1970s, he was drowning in debt due to divorce settlements and alimony payments to his second and third wives. As he aged, Fox's smoking and financial troubles took a toll on his physical and mental health, leading to respiratory issues that affected his voice. Despite these challenges, he continued to perform until he suffered a heart attack while filming his new TV show, The Royal Family. Although he was revived and taken to the hospital, he tragically left us at the age of 68. 25. John Wayne. John Wayne was one of the biggest stars in Hollywood, making over 200 films during his career. He is best known for his roles in classic westerns like El Dorado and The Searchers. He was also a tough guy in war movies, starring in 8 films about World War II to entertain soldiers fighting abroad, showing his commitment to supporting the troops. But behind all the fame and success, John Wayne had a serious problem that he couldn't escape. He was addicted to smoking. He started smoking at a young age and continued throughout his life. While his smoking didn't seem to hurt his acting career, it caused big health problems. In 1964, John was diagnosed with lung and stomach cancer. To fight the lung cancer, he had surgery to remove his left lung and 2 ribs. He managed to beat the lung cancer and became a strong voice for raising awareness about the dangers of smoking and the importance of cancer prevention. Sadly, even though he survived lung cancer, John Wayne was later diagnosed with stomach cancer. He fought this disease for 5 months, but passed away in 1979 at the age of 72. Please subscribe and like it. It really helps with channel promotion.